review topics. So now, those of you guys who are at home, I will shoot you guys an email about how our test is done at home. So most of you guys are here in person and we'll be taking the test in person. Just so you guys know, unless you totally go virtual, I expect that, like, if let's say you're just sick tomorrow, I'd expect you guys would come back and take the test in person then, like on Wednesday, Thursday, something like that. But if you go virtual, then I can release the test to you guys online. So it's really preferred with math to do paper pencil tests. And actually it's kind of a big pain online because I make them upload pictures of all their work and stuff anyhow. So it's not like it's just like a multiple choice test. So we're going to go through the process of reviewing for this test. I do have a practice Kahoot for us today to review some of these topics. So our test, so adding and subtracting fractions. What's the big thing you have to remember with adding and subtracting fractions? What would you tell someone? Yep. Common denominator. So we need that common denominator. So you need that common denominator. So that might be something to study. That might be something to go back and reread this tonight and say, oh yeah, that's right. Adding and subtracting, I need a common denominator. Where multiplying and dividing, I don't. So that's huge to remember that. So what's our common denominator between 9 and 6? What's it? 3 wouldn't work. And let me show you why, because that's really common. So if I wanted this to be 3, I'd divide this by 2, right? But then I'd have to divide this by 2, and now 5 over 2 just became a fraction. So then we have a fraction within a fraction, which sounds brutal to me. I hope it's kind of same thing for you. And then same thing here, we'd have to divide each of those by 3. So that's not a great scenario. So typically we want the number to be the same size or even bigger. I think I heard it. 18. So it's number they want to become. So like 6 can't become 9 other than using a decimal. But 9 times 2 is 18. And so I know that 6 can also become 18. So they're both going to be 18. We have 18 as our common denominator. And once I have that, then if I change the bottom, I have to change the top. So I'm going to multiply 9 by 2, and then do the same thing up here. And then I'm going to multiply 6 by 3, do the same thing up here. And now I'm ready to subtract. So I get 16 minus 15 is 1. And then 18 minus 18, you don't do anything with that. You just leave it. You don't really subtract those. You just leave it as a common denominator. Then you always do want to check and see if you can simplify. Now on the test, I'll remind you of that. The directions will say simplify. But always check and see, can I simplify this at all? And 1 over 18 can be simplified. So that's all we would have to do there. All right, questions? All right, so adding and subtracting integers and decimals. So working with the positive and negative numbers. And these are the ones where, again, I want you guys to be able to do this not entirely with a calculator, that you kind of think about it. So this is where I tell you guys to think about it as money, or yards in a football field, or we talked about like temperature. So that kind of helps you to think about what's really happening here. I go down 2 and down 5 more. It's probably too soon to talk about the Packer game, but you know, like you lost 2 yards, lost 5 more, there's a few sacks there. So we've lost a total of 7. So it ends up being a negative 7 there. So now it's okay to grab a calculator, but I would also try to do this without, just so that you're making sure that your answer makes sense. 4 plus a negative 7. So we go up 4 and down 7, so the negative wins. There's more negatives than positive. You have $4, you owe 7, you still owe 3. And then those double negatives there, the negative, negative, I like to change that just to a positive. So 8 and 3 would just be 11. Great. So multiplying and dividing with fractions, and then multiplying and dividing with integers. So multiplying is pretty straightforward. You're just going to multiply across the tops and the bottoms, but no common denominators are needed. I'm going to shorten that up. So no common denominators. Now multiplying, remember, don't cross multiply. We're just going to multiply across the tops and across the bottoms. You can cross cancel. Cross cancel if you want. So if I multiply across the top and bottom here, I get 24 over 63. That's a little bit tough of a fraction. That's kind of a tough fraction to simplify. You might realize that you can just divide them both by 3. And so we get 8 over, is that 21? Otherwise, you can put a cross canceled as well. So we can make this a 2 and a 3. And then you don't have to do that simplifying at the end. So either way you want to go about it. So this would be an example where I want you guys to show me some work. So I want to see that how you guys chose to do these. So do some work for me on those. What's the big thing to remember with dividing? Keep, change, flip. So this one, keep, change it to multiplication, and then flip this fraction. And then again, you can either cross cancel or multiply the way they are. This type, I want to cross cancel because in my head, 7 times 15 is not the easiest multiplication to do. So I'd divide each of these by 5. And then these two, I can divide them both by 7. So I end up with 4 over 3. Otherwise, you would have had like, it looks like 140 over, I don't know, what is 105. And then that, to simplify, would be kind of a big pain. So you'd have to do probably a whole bunch of simplifying. So cross-canceling is a great idea to kind of simplify that up early on. All right, the next thing is multiplying and dividing integers. This just has to do with the number of negatives and positives. So looking at these two, they're almost exactly the same numbers, just one of them has more negatives than the other. So what's the big difference between 7 and 8 here? One of them's going to be negative, one's going to be positive, right? Yeah, so just being able to tell the difference between that. So 7, what do I know about the answer already? It's going to be what? Positive, because there's 2 negatives. So there's 2 negatives here. And that's an even number. That gives me a positive answer. It doesn't matter what numbers are negative, what numbers are positive. It just has to do with the number of negatives. And this is only for multiplication and division. Now notice with this multiplication, I never use the times symbol in this case because I just use parentheses instead. I won't ever use X's anymore for times. I'll use the dot if anything, but parentheses is kind of a good one when they're negative. So this just ends up being a positive 14 when I multiply them. Whereas this one, there's only one negative, and one is an odd number. So that means my answer is going to be negative. So this is going to be a negative 14. So just that slight difference, just changing one of those signs. All right, we're going to stop. We're going to do a Kahoot. Our Kahoot, though, is going to be based off of last section, or the sections that are on the back. So kind of the stuff we haven't reviewed yet, but it's the stuff we most recently learned. So I asked you guys, when we do a Kahoot in here, just so you guys know, I do ask that you guys use your own name. Seems logical. That way I know if you're struggling or not. And then also use a laptop for it, please. So. And then I typically throw in a couple of questions that aren't math related, just to kind of change things up a little bit, but I think there's only 2 in this one though. And everyone should play, so this is not optional. Turn down the lights so we can for sure see negatives and positives. Oh, so real quick. Sorry, is that too dark or are we okay?
No,
you like it there, okay. So the only thing is though, you might want scratch paper, which kind of makes it hard to do any kind of work here. Like, you might want scratch paper or a whiteboard if you like have to work through some. We're going to be doing distributive property and evaluating. Yeah, that'll be good. Thank you. Yeah. Right. Right.
And you want to submit it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it should be open.
So he can go get it and see.
Yeah. So you just wrote, see, like submitted it super fast this morning. Holy cow. And then it looked at like, it's just the answers from the thing.
see if I
Okay,
can.
well, then you'll win it.
Well, I was actually, what, actually, this last word.
Okay, well, you still need to, sorry, you're in here now, until we know differently then. All right, here we go. And they give you like a full 2 minutes for everything, so it shouldn't be crazy rush. You guys really have to be doing this, please. This is not optional. So again, you have a full 2 minutes, so probably way more time than you need. What's it? Oh, 2 seconds, yeah, sorry. Down to 30 seconds. You might have to make a good guess. All right. So let's talk about it real quick here. So we have 4x, but the minus signs with that 8. And it's a positive 2x. Well, I guess all of them have 6x. So 4x and a positive 2x. But then we have this negative 8 and a negative 9. Down more, down 8, down 9 more. So that's how we get the negative 17. No, that's with multiplying. This is adding, so we're going to go into more and more negatives. So you lost $8, you lost 9 more. I know that's so confusing. I know, I don't have a better way to explain it other than it just keeps going down. This one has distributive properties, so again, it's up there. This has nothing to do with that. So you're going to want to distribute first, and then combine your like terms. Distribute first, and then combine your like terms. If you're not getting something to match, I can always come peek at what you're doing. Something's not working. Distribute first. Distribute this in. No, you have to multiply first. So on this one, now this is probably one of the big spots to make a mistake. A lot of you guys see 2 plus 6, you're like, oh, I'm going to add those together. We want to multiply before we add. So we're going to multiply first. So the 2 just comes down. This is 6 times x is 6x. 6 times 2 is 12, sorry. 12. And then I can combine these like terms. So 12 and 2 is going to be 14. So just simplify here. This one I didn't write, so the candy answers. This one is really about the signs, so be careful of the signs. Yeah, it's bad, yeah. Otherwise everyone else keeps using it. And we're at about 30 seconds. Alright, so in this case, we want to distribute this 7 in, but now we're multiplying, so kind of going back to what we were talking about the negatives and positives. A positive times a negative, these are both going to be negative. So without even really looking at the numbers, all the numbers are the same, they both end up being negative because those are both negative as well. So be careful with the signs. That slight difference will cause issues there. So they're giving you values for A, B, and C, and you want to evaluate A, B plus C. And if you're confused, it really means the same thing as A times B plus C. That helps. You're using what they give you for A, B, and C up there. Notice that B is negative though. So on this one, we do A times B. So we're going to do 1 times the negative 4 plus 5. 1 times the negative 4 is going to be a negative 4 plus 5. I go up 4 and down 4 and up 5. So the bigger number is positive, is going to be a positive 1 there. Alright, I think this next one's not a math question. So, lots of lead changes here. Our next holiday. The next holiday, like on the calendar. What if it's not a holiday? What? No, if it's not a holiday. Well, it's like the next thing that you're out of those 4. Yeah. Valentine's Day.
Thanks for reminding me this week.
Even if we disagree that it's a holiday, but. So A minus B, and then give you values for A and B. Candy is not the answer. I'll eliminate that one for you. Candy may be the answer if you win. You're doing pretty well for not pulling races there. What?
The only time I left the food is when it's playing my funerals. What?
Yeah. It actually has stuff I can talk about. We did that practice ACT. Oh. So we actually have stuff we can kind of maybe look at a little bit. I don't know. All right, so careful on this one. It's A minus B. A is 1, and we're subtracting a -4. So those double negatives, 2 negatives there, become a positive, so it just ends up being 1 plus 4, which is 5. No lead change there. All right. So it is a minus sign, just so you guys know. It's 5 minus. Think about what you're distributing. Alright, so guys, in this case, this was a rough one. So let's talk about it. We're actually not distributing the 5. We're distributing that negative in. Remember we said it's like a -1 there? So the 5, nothing happens to it yet. -1 times 2x is a -2x. -1 times a +3 is a -3. And then I just have to put that 5 and -3 together, which gives me 2. And then the 2x's just stays as negative. And you guys, this isn't the test right now, so if you're getting questions wrong, that's okay. That's just for you guys to be aware of what kind of you need help with, and we're going to review that stuff in a second. So don't get yourself bent out of shape about it. Miss out on fabulous prizes, but again, that's a minus sign between them. That should be minus. Same idea, it's kind of like there's a -1 there. Thanks for some of you guys saying you love math. Although that's not the correct answer. All right, distribute that in. So we get 9x plus 1. This becomes a negative 4x, but then this becomes a positive 2. So we get 9x, and then we're subtracting 4x. 9 minus 4 gives us that 5. And then 1 and 2 is going to give us 3. So 2x plus y. And then you should simplify it. So just stop when you substitute it in, simplify as well. You're welcome. All right, pretty good, guys. So sorry for those of you guys who chose the red. The red you still needed to go further. That's not simplified. So this actually is exactly what it should look like when you substitute it in. So 2, this is being multiplied to 7. And then you're adding a negative 3. So 2 times 7 is 14, and then minus 3. So that's how we get that 11. All right, the last one's not a math question. So you're off the hook if you're done with doing math questions here. Which team was at a state championship this weekend? Congrats, esports. You guys ended up taking second, I think. So pretty good. All right.
Hey, my name can dance better than you.
All right, so top 5, so including system right in, guys can come up and grab a treat here. Like, don't tell us down here to be candy. Do you need glasses? Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
You guys can come and dig through there. All right. Just make sure, guys, when I let you guys have candy, that I do get the wrappers, make it to the trash, please. And who's to say we're not all winners? There's a participation trophy. Yeah. If you'd like, come grab a We're going to continue on with talking about these types of problems that actually we just did the quick boot on. So this is probably more so the algebra that you guys will be seeing throughout the year. So those of you guys who are like, fractions, I don't really love them. I'll tell you guys that this is kind of more some of the stuff we'll be using throughout this year. So this is kind of heavily like tested on for this test. And this is a place where you definitely want to show some work so that if you make a small mistake, I can kind of follow what you did. So the problem's down here, but when we do this, we want to start by putting these values in. So we're going to substitute the values for the variables. And you are welcome to eat the candy in here, guys. It just gives you a little break anyhow. Just make sure wrappers end up in the garbage. So we're going to substitute the values for the variables. So in this problem, the 5 and x are doing what to one another? What is 5 and x doing to each other? Multiplying. So it's really 5 times x. So it's x is -2. I'm doing 5 times a -2. So that parentheses reminds me to multiply there. Then minus y, which y is a -8. Once we've done this, now we want to evaluate, find the answer, but we're going to kind of use PEMDAS to help us with that. So if there's ever a question on what we should do first, you kind of use PEMDAS with that. So in this case, multiplication is more important than addition and subtraction. So 5 times a -2. Now you have to think of the multiply rules. So it's going to be a -10. So this is not the addition idea. We're not going up 5 and down 2. This is multiplying those together. So it ends up being a -10. But then, since we had minus and negative, this double negative, this really is going to be like +8 here. And now it becomes an addition problem. So here I'm going down 10, but then up 8. So what are we at then?
2.
What kind of 2? It's going to be a negative because the bigger number is negative, so this ends up being a -2. And again, negative versus positive doesn't seem like a huge difference. You're like, just a simple sign. Like, I mean, it's not a big deal. But I do want you to be aware that is a big deal. Again, we talked about a temperature, yards, if it is your bank account, it all matters. Now, on a problem like this, I would really like to see some work. You don't have to show me every step. Like, show me this. Oh, yikes, what just happened?
Magic.
Show me magic. So, like, show me this work or show me this, show me something, and then give me the answer. That way, if you don't get -2, I probably could figure out how you got the answer, but it gives me a lot more insight, or it allows me a chance to give you guys some partial credit. So, showing me some work, and so, like, the students that are online, they have to, like, actually take a picture of their work. So just know that this is something that I need to see from you guys, especially in problems like this. Same thing with this last little section here, is distributing and combining like terms. So in these types of problems, I definitely want to see your work, because if you make a small mistake, I don't want to have to say, you know, like if these are 3-point problems, I don't want to take all 3 points off. I want to be able to give you guys partial credit if you just divided wrong, or you multiplied the wrong number or something. So we're going to distribute first. And that's like when I like to use those little arrows to kind of help me see what that looks like. So remembering to distribute first is so important in example 9. Because a lot of you guys might see that 4 minus 3 and think, oh, I should just subtract those. That looks pretty easy to do. We don't want to just subtract first because we're not following the order of operations. So what's being distributed in number 9? It's being distributed here. Yeah, Justine? The 3, what kind of 3 though? Yep, it's a -3. So that's really important that this is the -3 being distributed. And then how about here? What's being distributed?
-1.
A -1. Very good. So we're going to distribute. So I have 4, nothing happens to yet. -3 times 1 is a -3. -3 times a -2 is going to be a positive. 3 times 2 is 6x. 2 negatives multiplied is positive. Then here I have a -1 times x, so like a -1x. And a negative times a -7 is going to be a +7. Did you get it? So then, now we can put the x's together. So our next step is to combine like terms. So we're going to combine our like terms. So I see the x's go together. So 6x, positive 6x minus 1x is going to be 5x. And then I have 4 minus 3, and then I have plus 7. 4 minus 3 is 1, plus 7 would be 8, and it's going to be a positive 8, right? So plus 8. And if you had 8 plus 5x, that's fine as well. And then finally, what's going on in this one? What's happening here? Yeah, it's just telling you to distribute that division. So you're really just dividing each of these by 2. There's